Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at She Talks Tech, Women Who Built and Scaled. We are Thanks, Erin. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome you all to Catalyst Commons for an evening dedicated to powerful conversation, community, and change. Welcome to those joining us online. Hello. Please feel free to comment or ask questions in the chat. My name is Megan Gervais, and I am the Manager of Founder Experience at the Accelerator Center. Woo! Easy, yeah. At the AC, we have the privilege of working with entrepreneurs across every sector, from AI and clean tech to fintech and digital health. But no matter the industry, one thing remains constant. Scaling a startup takes vision, grit, and support. That's exactly why we created She Talks Tech. We wanted to build a space to amplify the voices we don't hear enough in tech, especially those women founders and leaders who are not only launching startups, but building legacies. Tonight, we are shining a light on the women who've taken their companies and careers to the next level, those who've navigated growth, raised capital, overcome bias, and redefined leadership on their own terms. This is about more than just business. This is about changing the narrative of what's possible. Events like this are only possible because of the strength of our community, and we're so grateful for the partners who help bring them to life. A huge thank you to Catalyst Commons. Give a wave, Catalyst Commons people. Yes, thank you. To Catalyst Commons for hosting us here in this beautiful space. And a round of applause, please, to our generous sponsor, BMO, for their continued support of women in innovation and entrepreneurship. Thank you very much. Now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce tonight's moderator, Tabitha Laverty. Tabitha is the Chief Operating Officer at the Accelerator Center, where she leads marketing, communications, partnerships, and strategic initiatives, including the AC's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Action Plan. Is there anything you don't do? I don't know. But her impact goes far beyond the operational side. Tabitha is a seasoned executive, a storytelling powerhouse, and a dedicated community leader. With over 15 years of experience in the nonprofit and public sectors, Tabitha has shaped transformative strategies, forged impactful partnerships, and mentored countless professionals across the tech ecosystem. Her leadership has been recognized through multiple nominations and awards, including the Global Women in Leadership Award. Tabitha's work is rooted in lifting others up, and tonight, she's bringing that same spirit to our conversation. Please join me in welcoming Tabitha Laverty.
Thank you, Megan. You guys can hear me okay? That's perfect. I love that introduction. It made me sound amazing. I'm really excited to be joined by three other really amazing women here this evening. I'll invite our panelists up to join me on the stage. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they're so great that they just need their moment to shine. But before we get started, those of you who have been to a She Talks Tech before know I always like to do this at events. We like to know who's in the room because we like to have this be a conversation, and we want to know how can we help you with our conversation this evening. So quick hands up if tonight is your first ever She Talks Tech. Woo! Look at that. That's amazing. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. These are some of our favorite events to do for a couple of reasons. First of all, we spend a lot of time talking to founders and entrepreneurs at the AC. We know entrepreneurship really, really well, but we also know that there are people out there in the community that are entrepreneurship curious, maybe haven't made that jump yet. So we really focus on She Talks Tech, making sure that we're able to talk about tech and entrepreneurship in a way that's accessible to people who maybe haven't started that journey or maybe never will start that journey but want to be a part of our community anyway. So if tonight is your first She Talks Tech, thank you, congratulations. We hope it is your first of many. Another quick hands up if you are a tech founder, an entrepreneur. A few in the room, wonderful. I see some familiar faces, which is great. Anyone in the room who thinks they might like to be an entrepreneur one day? I'll put my own hand up. I'm okay with that. Folks who are just here because you want to meet three really incredible women. Yes, that should be all of you because our speakers tonight are truly amazing. We are really fortunate to be joined by Julie, Janet, and Abby, folks that are inspiring to me, and hopefully you'll find some inspiration from this evening as well. I'll just let you guys each maybe the 2-minute version of who you are and why you're so great. And Julie, we'll start with you. It should be on.
Okay. Yes, it is, right? Okay. Well, why am I so great? It's a little awkward.
Sorry.
So my path, I would like to tell you, is been very eclectic. I went to the University of Waterloo. I graduated with a degree in dance. And then I became a financial planner, because that's what you should do, and worked for a big bank. And then me and 3 other women had a dream. We were kind of tired of our corporate jobs, to be honest. I had little kids. We were sending them out into the world. People said, please label everything. And we said, how? And they said, well, you can use masking tape and a Sharpie. And I don't know if you've ever tried it, but it comes off. Sharpie, there's nothing permanent about that marker. It comes off in the dishwasher. It doesn't look that good. And so we had an idea we could do something better that would label, and I always have my trusty water bottle. So we started making labels with kids' names on them and designs that go through the dishwasher and the microwave, super durable. And we grew that business to 8 figures of revenue, 40 employees. And we got a phone call one day asking us if we'd ever considered selling the business. And although it wasn't for sale, we were about 12 years in, and it seemed like a good time to take our money off the table. And so we did, and that put me out into the world where I ran a business for someone else. And today I do speaking at workshops around a book and workbook that I wrote called Big Gorgeous Goals, which is really about why some of us do big things and others of us get caught in the dust of our to-do lists, because we're really not all that different.
If you have not seen the Big Gorgeous Goals book and workbook, you definitely should. It is amazing. Yeah. Janet, how about you?
Hello, everyone. I'm the one who I feel a little bit awkward being here because I am not a business founder. However, I feel like I've had a career of firsts. So I'm probably the one who left university, started with a big bank, stayed, but through my career, just had so many different experiences and learning moments, I'm going to say good and bad. First female in a lot of roles, a lot of, I'm going to say mistakes, maybe tears, learning, lots of stuff happened along the way. And then I left and I went to a family-owned business, Cowan Insurance, and was president there for a few years. And now I'm happily, I'm going to say retired, but I consult, I do board work, and I'm an investor in a business that my daughter-in-law founded. It's a beverage company. It's called Deem. And the beverage is called Donna at LCBO, by the way. And but I'm an investor and learning a lot and helping along the way. So I feel like I've had a lot of different experience that's taught, that has taught me critical lessons in life, I would say. Oh, Janet Pettigrew. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Janet. Hi, everyone. I'm Abby Peters. My journey starts a little bit the way that Julie's did. In fact, we were at UW at the same time. So I graduated from the University of Waterloo with a degree in rhetoric and professional writing. And somehow that qualified me to work in the tech ecosystem. Don't ask me how that happens, but the first part of my journey I actually spent working in university administration. I'm a bit of a politics nerd, so found my niche in communications and government relations. Did that at UW for a time. What I found through my period of time working in senior admin at the university was I remember very distinctly often being the only woman in a given meeting, and certainly the only person under 45 in a given meeting. So it was a lot of interesting learning for me. Certainly, I noted it at the time. I don't think I really understood how important it was until later. Fast forward through 10 years at UW and got a phone call from Ian Klugman who said, hey, I'm thinking about a communications and government relations role at Communitech. Should we talk? And I said, why? And ignored him for a year. Then he called again. And I said yes the second time. And so I had a tremendous adventure at Communitech. I was employee number 11 at the time, was able to help the organization and the community build some really interesting things. I will say, though, that I had not experienced entrepreneurship firsthand until I left Communitech and started Northguide, which is my current business. It's a consulting firm. And boy, oh boy, you entrepreneurs are really good at what you do. I'm learning a lot.
Wonderful. So I had the pleasure of speaking with these ladies in advance of our chat, and one of the things that really struck me about all of us is that we have really unique career paths, very different career paths, and not necessarily on paper what you would say, I started in journalism, what I would be doing in 25 years into my career after I graduated from journalism. And I think that's something that's really, really special about women and women leaders in particular is the variety of paths that our careers can take. You've all kind of given us the high-level overview of your careers. I'd love to talk about that journey and how you went from what you should have been doing to what you really wanted to be doing to what, like, hey, I have this amazing opportunity. I feel really great in banking. I'm great. I'm going to retire, but maybe sort of kind of not retire. I'm going to become an entrepreneur. What role did risk play in that, and how did you manage that risk and that imposter syndrome that many of us feel when we're like, oh, this is a big thing that I'm about to do? What role did that risk in managing that experience play for you as you grew your careers? Anyone can start.
I'll go.
Yeah.
So when I did my MBA, early in my career, and I had 3 pieces of advice. I won't go into all of them, but one of them was take the job that scares you the most, and I did. So I followed that advice through my whole career because you're building out your resume, you're learning so many life experiences. You might find yourself in a role that you think, what the heck am I doing in this role? But you decide to learn from it, and then you grow. And I do think that's what made the difference, is owning it, so taking the accountability yourself, but then taking the risk to put yourself out there and do something that is scary, but there's only good that could come from it. If you have a bad experience, you learn from the bad experience, right? So it's just, it's the learning.
Awesome.
I think at the beginning of my career, I was very risk averse. I think over the course of time, I've come to understand which risks are going to be okay if they don't work out. If you make a decision and it's not quite the right one, what's the worst that can happen? Can you reverse course? Can you, fix a given situation? I do think, as Janet says, try the things that scare you, because if you put your hand up and seize an opportunity, it might be fantastic. It might be the thing that leads you to the greatest job you've ever had, the greatest project you've ever managed. So it's worth taking a deep breath and jumping at it.
I think the night we sat down together at the kitchen table and we had printed off these letters, because email wasn't so much of a thing then, and we had to cut our list back because we didn't have enough money to actually mail as many letters as people we knew. So the list got carved back, and we sat at that table and we licked, folded, stamped, and then somebody had a cheap bottle of champagne in their fridge, and we opened it and we said, here's to the IPO one day. So as much as we were cautious and careful, we also had big dreams for where we were going with the business. And I think that kind of reflected our, we took time before we paid ourselves. In fact, probably too much, because it kind of turned into either you got to pay me or I got to get a job, with the business. And so, but it was that dance between, being fiscally kind of cautious and responsible, but still wanting to take big risks and do big things.
No, that's great. And I wonder, Abby, if you want to speak a little bit on kind of your view of your career in seasons, and moving from one thing to the next, and what that feels like, making that decision to move on to the next.
Yeah, I have come to recognize something in myself, which is I have chapters in my career. For me, 10 years is about the right length of time to do something. That sounds like an extraordinarily long time now. I know people don't stay in one place that long. I never had the same job for that period of time. I think I had 5 jobs at the University of Waterloo, but spent a decade there. And got to the point where I started to get like itchy. I wasn't going to be able to do the next thing. There wasn't a clear path for me. I was frustrated. I was grouchy. And so I knew it was time to make a change. And I will say probably I recognized that in myself. Again, it was 15 years at Communitech, but toward the end, and I'm sure the pandemic played some part of this, I started to recognize that feeling again, like, you know what, I've had 5 jobs here, it's time to go and try something else. So I do think of chapters in my career. So we'll see where I am. It's been 4 and a bit years at Northguide. We'll see where I check in with me 6 years
That's
from
right.
now.
We'll call you in
I'll
6
let you know.
years, see if you've got the itch again and what maybe is next on your agenda, and if you stuck with entrepreneurship. No, that's amazing. And I love how you mentioned, Julie, as well, the role of vision in all of this. So, how do you define those big goals, what you want for yourself in your life? I wonder if you can speak a little bit about your why, either in Mabel's Labels or in other roles that you had, and how the why of what you were doing shaped that vision.
When we moved to our first, so we started off in a basement, a very, very small basement in Hamilton, Ontario. And we very quickly outgrew that basement. So when we were outgrowing the basement, we had this idea that my sister-in-law should buy a bigger house so we could have a bigger basement. Literally. And she did. And we moved into that basement. And on the day we moved in, she was like, this is a big commitment. Like, we got to stay here for at least 5 years. And I remember saying to her, if we can't stay for 5 years, it'll be the least of your worries. Like, the finances won't be a worry if we can't stay here for 5 years. And she said, no, we've got to. We've got to. And I think we lasted 18 months. At 18 months, we had 12 people coming to work every day. The internet kept dying because it was
household internet.
Yeah. Right? Household internet. And we, some cars were bumping into each other in the driveway. And our accountant came in one day and we sat in the dining room upstairs because there was nowhere for us in the office. And it was filled, one whole wall of the room was filled with boxes of printed material for the business. It was he was like, you may think this is charming, ladies, but you need to really think about whether your staff likes coming to work here. And so we had lost sight because we were on this big vision. We hit the hockey stick. We were on the way up. And, in our minds, we just had to figure out how to make it work. And we were making it work. The dining room was full. The basement was full. We were sitting in corners with our laptops.
This is fine. Everything's fine.
Everything was fine, except that it really wasn't. And so then we had to move again. And that was really stressful and disruptive, right? The idea of moving a whole business. And so that's where we had the big vision, but we didn't always have the planning to the level that we needed as the business grew really quickly.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the big message is that it's okay to change that goal and that vision as you go to say, hey, 5 years, we're in the basement for 5 years. It's okay to go, actually, no, that's not going to work for me anymore. And just adapt. And
we wanted to keep growing. We couldn't stay where we were.
Yeah.
That was the reality we had to face.
Wonderful. In your entrepreneurship journeys or in your career journeys, everybody likes a good what not to do story. So was there a moment when you felt like I'm on the wrong path, everything's about to fall apart? What was that moment for you, and how did you kind of bring it back and get back on track with your career or your business? Janet, why don't we start with you for that one?
So one of the roles that I had. So I'll give you the context that when I started. So it was BMO. When I started in the bank, I was a young teller at the time from St. John's, Newfoundland. And I had moved to Ontario, and everything was bigger and different, and I was adjusting. However, did my MBA and progressed, and I was working in branches, so in Oakville or Burlington and different branches. And I received a call for my first job that was going to be corporate in Toronto. And I thought, okay, take the job that scares you. So I took the job and I started commuting to Toronto. And I realized quickly that the job I had was to transition, not anybody, but there's a group of people within the organization that were on a variable compensation. And my job was to take away a bunch of the variable compensation for the leaders. And boy, were they mad. So I think of myself at the time as kind of naive and going into the big city, and then I'm in this role changing compensation for some big players across the country, and they did not hold back. We would have calls, and they would vocalize how they felt. They would slam phones. They would have their little moments and stuff. And I remember taking the GO train back to Oakville at the time, getting in my car and literally crying my eyes out before I went home to my kids, because I didn't want that person to show up at home. And what I've said since then is that job defined me. So the president of the bank at the time saw my courage and perseverance. And I taught myself a lot through that journey. And I'm actually thankful that I was female and I could cry, because I was able to release, kind of pull up my socks, go home, have dinner with my family, and kind of get on with it. But it was really tough, but it was also probably my best learning I've ever had in my career.
Any other It's About to Fall Apart stories you want to share? I'm sure you've got one, Julie.
Well, one of the challenges that we faced all the time was that we basically did 25% of our annual sales in the month of August. Mm-hmm. And so that creates, like, when you have a bubble like that of, like, everyone's going back to school, everyone needs labels. So that is the time that moms think about getting their kids organized. And, you know, they might buy camp labels at another time. There's other, like, busy times, but 25%. And it was really hard to build systems that could tolerate that kind of a balloon. And, you know, we made it some of the time, and some of the time August was, like, not pretty. There was a time where my husband would take the kids and they would go, like, canoe camping in Algonquin Park for 5 days, because basically I was going to work 20 hours, like, lay down my head for 3, get back up and, you know, for like a week or 10 days or more. And, you know, that became kind of untenable at a certain point. And so then I think we were always resourceful. We have always been resourceful about getting experts. So somebody had a friend who was an efficiency expert at Toyota, and he did an after-hours contract and came and helped us, like, figure out how to make our production process, like, more efficient, less thinking, more straightforward, you know, because it wasn't just like the volume, it was also the errors and the, like, how do you reduce errors? How do you streamline the process? How do you clear those bottlenecks that are holding up the process? And so we, you know, and then anything you fix works for a while, and then the business grows again. And, you know, and I always kind of felt like, if I ever wake up in the morning and feel like I know what I'm doing, wait for it. Where is it? What's happening? Because it just felt like you're always on the growth edge. You have to learn, like, every week, every month, every day. Sometimes it feels like every 5 minutes, and it can be, like, exhausting. But when the business is continually growing and you have a bigger and bigger team, you really have to be leaning into that growth.
Amazing. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about leadership development and the transition you've all made very beautifully in your careers from maybe being individual contributors to being leaders within your organizations. I'm sure there's some folks in the audience today that are starting to think about that journey themselves. What can you maybe tell us at a high level about your leadership style and how you made that transition from individual contributor to manager, and then maybe from a manager to a more strategic leader?
I think, like, leading from in front, beside, and behind, I like to think about. And I'm kind of a leader who likes to lead from behind. Like, I like to build consensus. I like to put my team forward and give them credit for things. And one of the things I really had to learn was, like, sometimes you got to step out front and you got to lead the charge and you got to just do it. And it wasn't a state that felt natural to me, but we got to a point where, like, the team got to be where we didn't sit around the table and hash it out and come to that consensus anymore. It was like all of you looking at me to tell you what we were going to do, right? And so like that transition, and I mean, I hired a coach, worked on my own leadership, went to conferences, like kind of really tried to develop that, because it got to a point where like I couldn't just kind of fly by the natural tendency I had as a leader anymore.
That's great.
I think, it's a interesting question. What came immediately to mind for me was my first leadership position, which I was spectacularly bad at. I had two gentlemen who were reporting to me all of a sudden, who were both 20 plus years older than me, and whose idea of a hard day's work was not the same as mine. So I muddled through it. I don't know that I had much impact in the moment at all. I think, what I found has helped me is finding people either in my current organization or in my network that I think are really effective leaders, and trying to model what they're doing, ask advice, formally or informally, find yourself a mentor and a coach. It's tremendously helpful even just to talk through things situationally and understand, how might this play out? If it goes badly, what might I do next? I'm like Julie, I'm very much, I think, a lead from behind. I'm much more comfortable leading through suggestion and influence. I'm not a put the hammer down, we're going to do it this way. I have learned, though, there are moments where you've got to do that. I think the pandemic, probably for most of us, was that moment. The time for influence and suggestion was past. We just had to get stuff done. And sometimes that meant being far more direct and prescriptive than perhaps was comfortable.
The only thing I would add is, in addition to looking at those positive role models, I also spent a lot of time working for people thinking, I'm never going to do that. Or, I would do that differently, and then follow through. But I would say I'm a similar type of leader. I believe in the team that you build, positive reinforcement, really effective communications and stuff. But being able to make a decision. And there's just one other thing that I would say is own it. So don't wait for someone to come to say, oh, you should, or why don't you? Really set a goal for yourself, put yourself out there, network, get in front of the right people, and speak confidently that you're ready for whatever role it is, because no one else is really going to rally for you except for yourself. You got to make it happen.
And I think one of the things that stood out to me in my career, going from an individual contributor and being a very competent and talented marketing professional to moving into managing other marketers, was around I have a way that I do it, and you have a way that you do it, and they might be different, and that's okay. And to figure out a way to make space for that as a manager was something that, same thing, my first management job, I was not a good manager because I had to learn that I wasn't promoted to manager because I was the best marketer. I was promoted to manager because somebody saw in me the ability to make more really great marketers, and making that transition, and then from a manager to a leader, even more so. Now I'm making really great teams. Hopefully, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong. AC team, yeah, maybe tell me later. So yeah, like very significant shifts from that individual contributor to a manager to a strategic leader.
Yeah, and I think as an entrepreneur as well, like, I led the IT function at Mabel's Labels. I had 10 people on that team that reported to a leader who reported to me, and I have a dance degree. You're right? Like, yeah. And they're all like, well, we're writing the custom code for the back end and the printers and how this works and that works. And, I'm kind of like, and I'm listening to things, and I'm like, I'm not sure. I feel like there's maybe some BS in this. I'm not really sure, but what do I know, right? And so I had to figure out very quickly in that 8 years of me leading that team how I was going to navigate on subject matter that I really did not know much about. And that was mentors, calling people up and being like, so what do you think about this? Like, does this sound legit to you? Because here's my concerns. I'm starting to learn how to trust myself in that I was usually right when I had that concern. And so how could I then kind of navigate those things and ask the right questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've all mentioned the importance of mentorship and having a coach, whether it's somebody who is informally in your life, formally in your life, somebody you've hired. For those of you who don't know, the AC runs education and mentorship programs. So we're big fans of mentorship at the AC. But I wonder if you each can, maybe speak very briefly about a mentor and how you worked with that mentor, how they helped you navigate a situation and move to that next part of your career.
I think, I think about mentorship in a couple of different ways. I think finding a coach or a mentor who can work with you formally is really helpful. I've had 3 or 4 at different points in my career because I had just, changed a job function, joined a new organization. Those are folks who can help you understand how to navigate your new reality and think about, how you want to maximize the experience for yourself. I am a big believer in peer mentorship as well. So find those folks, whether it's through a regular meetup, a peer group, or even, invent your own. I have stayed in touch with some of my closest colleagues who used to be in leadership roles at Communitech because we all work in different places now, but we come together as a bit of a support system, a sounding board. And there are folks who, will, if you think of it as, your personal sort of either give you a kick in the butt when you need it squad or cheering squad, those are folks that you need to have on speed dial.
I think what I would add to that, so I've had a lot of peer mentorship actually as well, and is ask for the constructive, so it's always nice to sit down and for someone to say, oh, you did a great job with that speech or whatever it was that, or it could be a client or a customer thing, but ask for the constructive to say, if there was one thing I could have done better in that moment, what would it be? And because the best learning I've had through my career and life is the constructive. That I really hold dear, and I think it's helped me with my self-awareness, right? And we're always learning. You never get it all figured out, but I think it really is so important.
I think it's also the don't be afraid to ask. One of the mentors who's been a really long-time mentor to me now was a prof of ours at UW. And I think the first way that we forced him to help us was by standing in the line outside of his office during office hours, even though we weren't students. And we went in and sat down, and then he stuck his head out and he was like, you're going to be waiting a while. And Larry became, his name's Larry Smith, for anybody who might know him, and he became like, he would give us these audiences like once or twice a year. He was fascinated by our business, but he didn't work with businesses like us or invest in businesses like us, but he would have us in. And he gave us some of the best golden nuggets. Like, I remember like laying out for him this problem I was working on with 1,600 taxing jurisdictions in the United States and how I was going to collect and remit and what I had to do. And he looked at me, and I was down here trying to figure it out. And he looked at me and said, Julie, with all due respect, your accountant's not doing his job. And I was like, oh, you're right. And sometimes like it's like he flipped the light switch and all of a sudden I knew. And, I feel fortunate because I still get to go out for dinner with him once or twice a year. And so that's like probably the longest mentor that I've had on this journey. But like, be brazen. Be brazen. We stood in line at office hours. Like, do not hesitate to ask people for what you want, because it really, people like to be asked, actually, and they're really willing to help you.
I think it's also worth pointing out that, giving and receiving feedback is a skill and a bit of a talent. We're going to do questions in just a second. This So you're up first. Giving and receiving feedback is a talent, and it takes some practice. And if you're going to have a mentor, to make the most out of that relationship, you do have to be open to really receiving that feedback. I had someone today, I asked them a question, and they said, just want to check. Do you want to know what I really think? I was like, yes, of course I want to know what you really think. And then I didn't like what they said very much. And I had to take that in and process that a little bit and say, well, I asked. A very reasonable question around mentorship that I think folks will have a question is, where do you find a mentor? How do you ask? You can be brave and ask, but how do you ask? Who do you find those people? I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say, if you're an entrepreneur, we got some great resources for you at the AC. And I'm also a member of the board of directors on Women's and Communication and Technology, and we have a really amazing free mentorship program that opens up in August. So keep your eyes open for that. But I'm sure there are other ways. So you guys, how do you find a mentor? How do you ask somebody, will you mentor me? Is that a weird conversation? How does that go?
I do programmatic mentoring, right, through organizations like yours. I think that's a really great way of getting also if you don't really know who you're looking for and you don't feel like that person's in your network, leaning on somebody else to help you find that person, knowing your problem, I think can be really helpful.
And this is where I come back to the structured and the unstructured. So I don't know that I've ever formally asked anybody to be my mentor. I have engaged with a coach at different points in my career. That was usually something that was organized, through my employer or with the support of my employer. But staying connected with people whose advice you trust. Julie's one of my mentors. She probably doesn't know that, but I call her and say, what am I supposed to do about this? With some frequency. Just knowing, again, who's on speed dial, who can I ask of this question? Finding those networks of folks who do your job in a different organization or in a different community is hugely valuable, because we do get tunnel vision. I don't know how to solve this problem, but there's somebody in Edmonton that I met at a conference that probably has a perspective that would help me. Think about those networks as well.
I don't know that I have much actually to add to that one either, other than people are always willing to help when you ask. And for me, in addition, so within corporate world, there's always structure, right? And coaching and all of that. So, and then you have peers that you lean on more than others, as we've said. But I also have a close, trusted friend that sometimes you just need someone to talk it out. And it's not that you want the solution for whatever it is you're working through, but finding that person that could be your, I listen to that person, they listen to me, and it actually has helped me tremendously through some big decisions in my career.
Wow, wonderful. So we're going to open the floor for questions pretty soon here, but while Shreya gets our super fun microphone set up, we figured we'd do some lightning round questions. They're my favorite type of questions on these panels. So your first lightning round question, first thing that comes to your mind, don't overthink it. What's one risk you're really glad you took? Addie, you're up.
Taking the job at Communitech.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Quitting my day job and going all in on Mabel's Labels.
For me, it was quitting corporate world and going out on my own as well. I'm as happy as I've ever been.
What is your go-to hype song before a big pitch, a big presentation? What's going on? What Taylor Swift playlist do you have going? What's up?
I like Fight Song by Rachel Platten.
Nice. That's a good one.
Walking on Sunshine. Katrina and the Waves.
Okay, I sang karaoke as a leader for I Got a Feeling by Black Eyed Peas.
Yes.
And I did really poorly.
That is why I love that question, because put your hand up if you thought Janet was I Got a Feeling kind of person. We learned something really amazing. We have here at She Talks Tech a really cool question asking microphone. There's one rule, you have to throw it. Has to be thrown. So put your hand up, and Shreya will toss it to you, and we will let you catch it. There you go. Perfect.
Does this work? Oh my gosh.
Oh, it works really well. Yeah.
So my question is actually for Julie. Did you actually study under the professor you asked for help from?
I did not personally take his course, but one of my co-founders did, and she was the one who had the idea we should go and talk to him. And it's just been like, it's that example of like, it's more than 20 years ago that we stood in that line. So it's kind of crazy to think, and then you have other mentors, it's a one-off or a short season, or everything has its season. Some people stay for a long time.
I was just wondering how brazen you actually were. We'd like to go next.
Right behind you. Woohoo!
Thank you. I have a question for all of you, actually. You talked about taking the biggest risk. What was the catalyst that gave you the courage to take that change direction? Like, Julie, you went from corporate founder to author. Janet, you went from corporate banking to taking a presidency at a local firm to going off on your own. And for you, you went off and you moved from academia to community to your own organization. So was it family? Was it the son was in the right position? Was there something that gave you that courage to take that step in a different direction?
I think for me, it was a couple things. I was frustrated because I could no longer see the next step on my career path at the university. I hit that wall. And so there were two things. There was more government relations and strategic communications work I wanted to do. And I also didn't want to be a lifer in academia with all of those wonderful connotations.
For me, a big part of the decision, and we didn't touch on it earlier, but I think take care of yourself. So, through your career journey, life gets very busy, kids, marriage, just normal everyday stuff for some, and you take on a lot of stress. And I think you have to own it and manage it and determine what's best for you. So it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, own it. But I actually felt that it was time for me to have a change in my life and put myself first. So that was it for me.
I think for me, there was always some catalyst at the change point. Going from financial planning to Mabel's Labels was basically, I was 8 months pregnant with my third kid, and my husband told me we couldn't do it anymore because I had 2 full-time jobs and he had 2 kids and I was, 8 months pregnant. And so there was like this catalyst of a shift that was happening where it was obvious that a move needed to be made. And then I think the catalyst on the other side of coming out of Mabel's was that I got really stuck after. I did not know. My identity was very tied up with staying at Mabel's Labels forever. I was going to be the founder that went in and took a boardroom and drank coffee with everybody and generally made them unproductive. And, read the paper or whatever. And then generally, I was out 6 months by my own choice. I was out and I kind of destabilized my whole life. It was kind of a catalyst moment of I got really stuck. I devalued myself. I wasn't sure if I was lucky or if I had skill. I really did a number. And so the catalyst then was as I figured things out and came out of that and started telling the stories about that, I kind of backed into writing a book, which sounds weird, but it was a workshop and then it was a keynote and then I kept realizing I had more to say.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest risks that I took in my career was around following my values. So I was working at an organization, a startup organization, and as a marketer, there's lots of rules we have to follow. And I was being asked to do something which I felt like wasn't ethical, and I had that choice between: do I want to be the good employee that is doing the right thing and making my boss happy, or do I want to say no, knowing that saying no probably meant I didn't work there anymore, and I had 2 little kids, and that was my income. And my 2 little kids are now big kids who are in the room, so don't freak them out too much. But that was scary. That I was like, I'm gonna, I'm going to be not employed very likely. But it was more important for me to follow those values, and I was unemployed for a little while, and then I came to the AC, and here I am today, 10 years later. So it worked out well, but that's a hard decision to make. Do I want to be the good person? Do I want to be the people pleaser and make everybody happy, or do I want to do what in my heart I feel like is right for me? Any other questions? Anyone want to test their athletic ability with catching and throwing? Oh, that one's a pass. We'll let
gentle handoff, which is good. I think in the first year of business or careers, people always talk about the challenges. In your first year of business as entrepreneurs or careers, what were the things that brought you the most joy?
It's a great question.
What was the thing sorry?
What brought you the most joy in your first couple of years?
It's fun. Like, it was really fun. We would go to the grocery store, and Jennifer Garner would be dropping her daughter Violet off at daycare, and there'd be a picture of them on the cover of People magazine, and on her backpack was Mabel's label. It was fun. And we were like, whew, and then the roller coaster would go down and there'd be a big problem. But you needed those moments of where you felt validated that what you were doing was worth it, because it made up for the drudge of an employee not working out, or production having problems, or IT missing a release date, or you needed the fun.
I think for me, the things that made it worth it, both at the university and through my time at Communitech, I like to build things. I like to see, the effort of a big team push pay off. And so I've been fortunate to do a lot of that in this community. I was involved in the early business case for the R&T Park and the Accelerator Center and the School of Pharmacy and the Communitech Hub. And when I drive through the community now, it sounds hokey, but I'm like, we did stuff, and it wasn't me, but I got to be part of a great team of community builders who actually did good work for my town.
Good answer. What I would say is I love developing people. So seeing, people advance through the organization, become leaders, reach their goals, or even take someone who was maybe on the wrong path or not sure and help them find the right path. So for me, it was always about the people, but also the role helped me entrench in the community. So I got to meet so many amazing people throughout different areas, but in particular Waterloo region, that I just feel very grateful every day for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's definitely easier if you're doing something that you think is fun and you enjoy, or that you're passionate about. Right up front here. Excellent.
I'm glad I wasn't the first to drop it. I'm just curious, many of you have mentioned, and I don't know if it was all of you, but having kids of your own. And as a woman with kids, starting my own thing, curious how you held motherhood and your own kids at the same time as also kind of building a legacy for them, not by the plaque on the wall, but the how women can be in the world and them watching you. Just curious to hear your experiences, especially in those earlier days of having kids.
My husband was taking, so he's a real estate agent, so he's got his own entrepreneurial venture there. And he was driving my son to lacrosse, probably. And they, got out to the end of the road to the busy street, and they were making the left. And my son was like, "It's not very busy out today." And my husband said, "Well, it's Sunday. Most people don't work on Sunday." And he was like, "Really?" And so we just had this, it was it's other people you always see reflected back on you. He saw us high five at the front door, take the kids, somebody, he saw that kind of way that we decided to live, which was Eventually, we put some things in place. We had a nanny who helped us and stayed until I think my youngest was 9 or 10. So for quite some time, but that enabled us to, the kids could come home from school, they could be fed, we could pick them up for activities, or the carpool could pick them up. It's like about putting the village around you to help you survive. And then it was also about I had my own business. If my kids were having the Christmas play at school at 2:00 on Friday, I was going. And so that's really how I think, you build it so you have flexibility. The irony is then you have less flexibility when you're running something, but you still have to carve out those spots and stay true to that because, and it was kind of funny because my kids just saw us in this, we just made it work. And that was, I think that what they also got to see was, what we were able to build and what we've been able to do. And they're like, oh, we were thrifting again. It's all full of Mabel's Labels, and and I'm like, well, Mabel's Labels has done some good things in your life.
Yeah.
So, but it is just that funny thing of showing that and putting those structures in place so that you can do the things you want to do with them and making it a priority.
I did a course, actually. I'm going to start somewhere else. Early on in my career, and it was they had a workshop or something, and it was about, managing your life. And they had us write down our priority and mail it to ourselves. And mine was to be true to my kids in terms of prioritizing family. And as I advanced and life was really busy, I either tried to have breakfast, as often as I could and dinner often as I could, which meant I might turn on my computer and go back to work afterwards. But I tried to stay true to that. I wasn't perfect, and it worked, number one. Number two is don't sweat the small stuff because... So Friday nights, this is dating myself way back, but we would do blockbuster movies in Swiss Chalet. And when my children grew up, I said, oh, do you remember all the rushing? Because I had to catch a train or, and I might have been yelling to say, hurry up and stuff. And they say, no, we don't actually remember that part. And I would drop them off and be stressed because I thought, oh, I'm a horrible mom. So don't be so hard on yourself. The kids are pretty resilient, and just know your priorities.
I don't have children, but I'm going to pick up on what Janet said. So for me, I have wonderful nieces. I like to think of myself as part of the village. But what I will say as someone who has led teams where I've had folks on my team who are parents of kids of whatever age, the things that you stress about as an employee, can I leave 20 minutes early to drop off? Can I do the bus pickup? What am I going to do in the morning? I might have to take that phone call from the car. That stuff is okay. The business is not going to come crashing down for you to look after your kids. And I would hope that, those of us who manage teams and run businesses get that.
Yeah. I got really great advice from a mentor pretty early in my career, and his saying was, you don't find time, you make time, meaning that if you look at your calendar, I'm not going to find time to go to the gym. It's not just going to appear. I'm going to have to look at my calendar and say, I am going to the gym from this time to that time. And what lands in your calendar is a reflection of what's important to you. So if you have kids and you want to do that 2:00 play, then that's in your calendar and that's protected time, and you treat it just like anything else. And I found as my schedule got busier that helped me a lot. The other part that I will say is, for me in particular, and it sounds like you have a very supportive partner as well, I'm not me unless my husband is who my husband is, because he does everything and more than I do sometimes. So, maybe those of you who haven't made that choice, pick your life partner carefully because it makes a big difference. Yeah, and my husband's the best. He's probably watching or will be soon, so, yeah. Anyone else with a question? Way back in the back, I saw a hand, I think. Oh. Maybe the people in the middle, like, be on guard. There we go.
Hi. All of you guys started your entrepreneurial journey, a little bit later after graduation. Do you have any advice for people who are just starting out in their careers or who are potentially debating if entrepreneurial, like an entrepreneurial journey is right for them at this time?
It's a great question. I can start. The incubator perspective is, we always say, start. There's never a wrong time to become an entrepreneur. It's totally okay to be an entrepreneur and have a day job. It's okay to try something and fail. And it's not wrong to go to work at the bank for a little while first, while you figure out what your entrepreneurial journey looks like. There's no right way to be an entrepreneur. At the AAC, we see people who come right out of school, they found an idea, they hit the ground running, and that's all they've ever done. We also have people who've been in industry for 20 or 30 years and say, I found a problem in the industry I've been in for 30 years, and I want to solve that problem, and I want to turn that solution into a business. And those people do remarkably well, sometimes better than the people who, started right out of the gate. So don't be afraid to try some things, but also don't feel like it's an either or decision that you need to make today. Like, if I'm not an entrepreneur today, I'm never going to be one.
Yeah, I think you have to find a way to push through those fears. I think it's really important because otherwise you get stuck, right? You get stuck and you never quite actualize what it is you're after. And so you've got to figure out how to put the right supports in place to keep pushing. And then the other thing I would just say is I really think like it's a marathon, not a sprint. So you've also got to figure out how to find the pace that you can stay at for a long time, because mental health and entrepreneurs is a real thing, and you see people burn out and all of the different pieces. You can't run super fast forever, so you've got to really figure out how you're going to navigate in the long haul.
You made the jump later, Avi. What's that been like?
I think I wasn't brave enough until later. I never thought that I would be able to start a business, and I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough about running a business. This is the first for-profit job I've ever had. I've worked in not-for-profits and academia until now. But I think what made the difference for me also was making the leap with a team that I trusted. So I'm not a solopreneur. I started a business with 3 co-founders, and we did a lot of thinking and planning and theorizing about it before we actually took the leap. And I'm glad that I had the experience to do it as a team. I was brave enough to do it with other people, just not by myself.
Thank you.
Which also goes to show you that you always will feel afraid when you take that next step, right? Like, this is a woman who got tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in grant money for your organization, led big teams, did amazing things. And then when she went to entrepreneurship, was afraid. It's normal. It's going to happen. You got to push through.
I think that's true. And there are days when you think, yes, this is the best thing ever. And then there are many other days where you think, oh my God, what have I done? It's normal.
What am I doing? Yeah.
See another hand right at the back there, maybe?
Oh, the tosses are short.
Okay. So I would like to know all the aha moments that you had that validated that you are going in the right direction, because a lot of times, you are doing something and you don't get that validation from the external environment. So what validated and kept you going?
That's a very good question. I think, couple of things for me. I at this point in my career, I have confidence to know when I've produced good work. And so I feel a sense of satisfaction when, I've helped a client develop a great strategy or a communications plan, or, raise the grant money they were looking for. There's validation in that. The moments where I'm uncertain, I'm very fortunate to have in my co-founder and partner in crime, somebody who always will say to me, keep the faith, we will get it done. And that, there are days when you think, I can't do this anymore. But if there's somebody in your corner who will say to you, keep the faith, you can keep pushing forward.
I think that's well said. And I've been reflecting on my own career journey, but also being an investor, actually, for my daughter-in-law's business. And it does take courage. And I'm not sure that even, so if I think of either or, there are many moments where you're not sure and that you would love someone to say, it's okay, but you have to go back to believing in yourself and having confidence in what you're doing. And that's when we go back to the mentorship. So whether it's a peer person or a friend that you're going to be able to confide in and have a conversation just to help you through that moment to give you the strength to go forward. But you got to it is perseverance. It's believing in yourself one day at a time, but setting your bigger goal.
When we started Mabel's Labels, we invented a category. We were the first company in North America making personalized name labels for kids that went through the dishwasher and the microwave, etc. And it was, honestly, I would imagine that Mabel's Labels probably has 200 competitors on their spreadsheet today, and that doesn't even count the Etsy mom who's got a little shop and who's selling something similar. We were, in those early days, we were afraid every day that somebody who was smarter than us or had more money than us was going to come and displace us. And I think our first competitor arrived maybe 8 months after we started. They'd ordered from us. They copied big parts of our website onto their website. At one point, one of our kids showed up on her website. It was a serious, and she was a fast follower. It's pretty, that's a legitimate business strategy. Taking our copy and stuff, maybe not. But that was the kind of things. And so we just kept putting our stake in the ground, and we kept saying that what we were doing really was talking to moms. And we were moms, and we knew from standing on the soccer field outside of the school at the gymnastics club, we knew what people wanted, and we were very convinced of it. And so we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And there were babies born every day. It was a consistently renewing market. It was great.
My aha moment in my own career was I spent the early part of my career working in a Big Four accounting firm, doing administration work. And while I was doing that work, I started volunteering at a couple organizations and found my way into marketing and fundraising that way. And that was my this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm a not-for-profit person and have really directed my career, minus a very small public sector detour in there, really towards impact-driven, values-based organizations, and that's what's defined my career. But that was I can do anything in the world. Marketers can go anywhere. From that mindset to this is what I do and who I am as a professional. Other questions? Oh, this is my son, by the way. Everybody say hi, Gabe.
Hello. So we had mentioned earlier on how we weren't always great at managing other people, and we struggled a lot early on with leading, especially people who have more experience in the industry, people who are older than you, people who might feel like they know better than you. And we also talked about the value of mentorship and finding people who can help you in learning. And what I just wanted to know, some of the valuable lessons that you guys learned around leading new people who might not respect you or might not understand your leading style, and how do you really get these people to respect you and get these people to sort of follow your lead and be able to lead them efficiently?
For the record, I did not plant this question. It's a great question, though. Yeah, it did seem a little suspicious there. I was almost like he overhears me talking or something. Yeah. For that reason, I'm going to opt out. Yeah.
I always like to talk with people who work for me about the trust bank account and how you don't start out with $100 in your bank account. You kind of start out with nothing. And so, it's my job to build the bank account with my team, and it's their job to build the bank account with me. And that's how we build trust. And then we get, when we get to a high level of trust, I also am a really big believer in building a culture of accountability. So people need to be accountable to the decisions that they make. They need to be able to make decisions. I need to let them make decisions, within the right scope and scale for the role that they're filling. And when they make a mistake, they need to feel comfortable enough to come and say, I think we made a bad one, and we need to be able to talk that through. So to me, it's really about that, like building that culture of accountability and building those trust bank accounts up so that we can then know how we operate and start to run really fast.
So when I switched from banking to Cowan Insurance, family-owned business, I did not know hardly anything about insurance. And it was really difficult personally because I felt like someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and say, what the heck are you doing there? However, I was genuine. I think you have to be really true to who you are and not try to fake it. So I was transparent, I communicated well, always engaged, the full team, and didn't assume that, well, for sure I didn't assume I knew it all. And I have to tell you, there were calls where I'm Googling insurance terms, trying to, to carry on a conversation, but you manage through. So you got to have the confidence to go forward, but you really show the team that you believe in them and that you're making a commitment to build that relationship to what was said. So it will make a difference.
I think there's sort of two things I would add to that. I think that the first sort of aha moment for me was when I realized the same leadership style doesn't work for every single person on your team.
Yes.
Right? We're all wonderful, messy humans, and we like to receive information and instruction differently. We like to receive and give recognition differently. We communicate differently. So understanding, what your team members actually want and need from you, and adjusting to, help create a really constructive relationship takes time, but you get better results as a leader. I think the other thing I realized through the course of my career is that what your team wants from you is as much clarity and confidence as you can give them. So to the extent that you have information that you are able to share, don't be stingy. Share it. Tell people things that, you think will help give them context for the decisions that are being made. Certainly you don't share everything. Folks they don't need to know, HR decisions and things that are sensitive and stuff that, comes out in due course. But as much as you can, tell people what's going on, and they feel better about, what's going on in the business.
Oh, there's two. You have to decide, you're going to go long or you're going short. There we go.
The question I have is around funding and financing, and just really within the current economy and things going on in the world, that many entrepreneurs like myself making less money but needing more.
Yeah.
So one thing that I'm very pro for, which many of you have talked about, is like the coaching, mentoring, having people to provide feedback. So I guess one question is about how are you finding the climate in terms of finding funding, getting more, because we as women typically don't get as much, but also at the same time don't ask for as much. While also when it comes to mentoring and coaching, we're more likely to give or ask for free. So curious your thought on that, and just how you still maintain the value that you have while also asking for that in return for funding.
Thank you for bringing out my soapbox.
I was going to say, we're all smiling because Julie's got this one.
Yeah. 4%, right? 4% of venture capital in Canada goes to women. So we've got a big hill to climb. It's going to take a very long time. We need more women to be investors, like Janet talked about, investing in her daughter-in-law's company. We need more women to do that because we're better with capital. We're more efficient with capital. We give better returns. There are a lot of great reasons to invest in women, and we need to talk about them and get engaged with groups like Women Funding Women because it is really important that we change the trajectory. I think some of it is that we start businesses that are different. We see different needs in the world, and so we start businesses for different reasons. And that doesn't always fit the scaffolding of the traditional model. And so it is figuring out, how do you do it? Are you going to bootstrap? Not everybody needs to raise money. Bootstrapping is a perfectly legitimate way to build business. That's how we built Mabel's Labels. But recognizing that, yes, some businesses need financing, some businesses need capital, and some of, depending on what you're doing, you may need a lot of capital. So you've got to figure out how to navigate, find the good advisors to help you kind of lay it out. But I think that as women, we need to stick together and we need to think about how we can help each other with this problem, because I think there's a lot of it that needs to be resolved and solved within us to figure out how to help each other. So, thanks.
The one comment I'm going to add is, because I think you mentioned this, but you have to ask, network and get in front of people and be confident when you ask. Sorry, men that are in the room, but many men just naturally, it's almost like salary negotiation or whatever. In history, not all men, but they will demand, a certain rate, or they'll go and ask. And sometimes I've had to reflect on that to say, so why wouldn't I? And I think we are holding ourselves back. It is not as comfortable, but I think you have to put yourself out there. And I think you should have set up the meetings and the networking. I've been doing a little bit for my daughter-in-law's business, actually, just to meet people, ask questions, talk about the environment, talk about investors, different financing options, and all of that kind of stuff. But I think you have to approach it with discipline and purpose.
Yeah, I think that last part is really important, right? Whether you're a bootstrap business and you're trying to figure out your pricing strategy, or you're trying to, raise angel investment or venture capital, it's not an ad hoc exercise. There's a discipline and a method, and there's lots of folks in this room and in this community that can help you do that. Right? You can talk to the Accelerator Center, talk to folks at Communitech, talk to Golden Triangle Angel Network. There is a methodology to help you with those things. It certainly doesn't solve for the systematic problem that Julie has outlined, but it teaches you a really important skill that you can put into practice.
I would build on that as well. I think to directly answer your question, what's it like out there is rough. It's rough out there right now. It's rough for everybody, and I think women feel that even more acutely. But fundraising is a skill, and there's a process to it. And this is not my area of expertise. My program's humans at the back. Put your hand up and wave. They're the ones who can answer this way better than I can. But there's work that needs to go in before you start having the conversations even. So to make sure that you're actually ready to have that conversation, you're ready to talk to an investor, so that when you are networking, you're sending those emails, you're trying to get those meetings, that you're actually ready to take them, I think is in a really important consideration that a lot of founders unfortunately miss. They just say, well, I need money, so I'm just going to ask for it. And the investor says, okay. And they have this whole lovely list of questions for you that you're not prepared to answer. And then they're on to the next, or, they no longer have confidence in you as a founder. So I think making sure that you look at it like a discipline, and not like, oh, well, I need money, so I got to go get some money. And to Abby's point, there's lots of people in this community that can help with that readiness aspect.
But why not you? That's my,
why not you?
Why not you? Because if it's not you, somebody else who's going to do the work, whose idea might not be as good, is going to make it down to the investors. So why not you?
I think there's a question at the back. Megan? Ooh.
The first.
There's always one.
It's all good. All right. So I have a question from our online group.
Awesome.
So with the mentors you had in your life, how did you know they were the right person to mentor you?
Ooh, I've been really fortunate to have a mix of formal mentors, so going through, being matched essentially. Some of those matches have worked out really, really well, and some of them not as well. I think what you're looking for is somebody you trust, somebody you feel comfortable with, because in order to be really well mentored, you do have to bring a certain amount of vulnerability to the table. So if you don't feel well matched and connected to that person, maybe that's not the best path. A lot of my mentors have actually been informal mentors, so either people I reported to or peers who I just formed a connection with over time and said, hey, I could really use some honest feedback. And in my own mentorship journey, it's been interesting to see some are there for a short period of time, some are there for a long period of time. I have several folks who started out as a mentor to me, somebody I considered to be above me in my career, and today we're peers, and now we're that support network for, leadership can be lonely sometimes. So who's that person that you call when you have this situation that you're like, oh, am I crazy? Am I totally out to lunch on this? Or is what should I do about this? So to watch those relationships evolve. But I think the trust and the ability, can you show up and be 100% yourself and ask the hard questions to this person? And if the answer to that is no, they may have a really great place in your life as an advisor or a friend or some other way, but you might not get the same value as a professional mentor out of that relationship.
I think every mentorship begins with a good cup of coffee, and then you figure it out. And some people you have one cup of coffee with and you get great nuggets from them, and then you move on. And then other people you're like, want to meet again next quarter? And then, you just kind of go from there. But I think you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you, and you got to find the right kind of chemistry and fit.
Yeah, I would just add, are you looking forward to the meeting, or are you putting it off?
That's great.
Yeah. So if you're not looking forward to it, wrong person.
Any other questions? Any other ones online? Not yet? Bob at the back there. Bob, I think that was the throw's fault.
No, all good, all good. Yeah, it takes me back to playing football at the University of Waterloo. So it's been noted how challenging it is for women leaders and women entrepreneurs to overcome a number of obstacles, systemic obstacles. I've got 3 daughters, so I'm a big fan of initiatives like this, empowering women. Kudos to all of you. The CEO of the Universal Women's Network has an area called, specifically in the area of male allies that they call support hers. And I'm just wondering for each of you, what have been your experiences in terms of any tips or suggestions that you could share with others of what has worked for you to better work with male allies and supporters that are, whether they're peers or funders or management or other colleagues. Thanks.
I have been fortunate, certainly through the early part of my career. Most of my mentors were male allies. And the things that I reflect on now, they were people who had really strong confidence in my ability, and they created space for me in conversations. They, asked me to join them in meetings with CEOs or cabinet ministers. And during the meeting, they would turn to me and say, why don't you, add to this? I have a question, perhaps you can answer. They created those, very deliberately created those opportunities. And there's enormous value in that for men or women. Create space for people because, they're bringing ideas and perspective into the conversation. And so it's a really powerful act.
Well said. I think what I would add to that, because teams are based on all the individuals in the team, and everybody matters, and diversity is so important. However, if I think of some of the career changes I had where I went into a very male-dominated team, I had to teach myself and be okay not to be like them. And sometimes I was a little bit frustrated that because I didn't want to go hang out or have maybe a beer or some sports event or whatever the case may be. But so I just stayed true to who I was and did work hard, engage, respect, all of that kind of stuff, but stay true to who you are and do it your way.
I have had a lot of mentors who were men, particularly in technology, when I needed those mentors. And so I think some of my greatest friends have come out of being, have appeared out of those mentors. And it is finding, the right people to also be allies and who will give you that support. And, a lot of men did not understand what we were doing at Mabel's Labels. That was obvious. More than 95% of our customers were women. And so it did take a little, and we did get some shade from the printing industry people. So it was really about finding those right people and finding the best people, to put around you. At one point, I will say, I built a group of women because the one thing that I found in my male allies was this building a business and a family, and finding people who could relate to the challenges of that was a little bit different than walking into the room as a leader of technology where there were not a lot of women in the room. And I have great friends from those rooms. So I think it's finding the good people.
Yeah, I agree. I've been very, very fortunate that if I look back on my career, the majority of folks I would call mentors have actually been men. It's only been later in my career that I've started to build a really strong network of female leaders. I will say, certainly male allies are out there, and they're important. When we talk about the systemic issues that we face, women can get around the table and talk to each other about what we already know really, really easily, but that doesn't actually change anything. So I think being open to having men as mentors when they say I want to help you, or I'm going to give you this advice, being open to the fact that yes, this is coming from a man and he's going to have a different perspective, but assuming that that man is coming to the table wanting to be helpful, and you're in a place where you have that trust and vulnerability where you can say, but here's what I experienced as a woman that you don't understand, and that person is receptive to that. I think that can be really, really valuable, and that's where we create a community that's actually impacting the systemic issue, not just creating tables of women to support women and tables of men to support men.
Thanks. That's great.
Awesome. I think we're getting pretty close to time here, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I think we'll wrap it on that one. However, you are welcome to stay, hang out, chat with our panelists. I think there's still some lovely charcuterie cups and drinks. I will do a quick little plug. You'll see up on the screen here shortly, there'll be a couple slides that pop up. I believe there is a feedback survey that if you'd like to leave us a note with some feedback about the event, we'd love that. And also, we are currently recruiting for our Women in Tech program. We call it Incubate Plus. It is a early stage entrepreneurship program designed specifically for women-led businesses, and applications for that are open now until Friday of next week, I believe. So if you're interested in working with the AC on growing and scaling your business, definitely check that out. Danielle is the program manager for that program. She's there at the back and would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you all for coming. We look forward to seeing you at the next She Talks Tech in October, if I remember correctly. October 23rd. Perfect. Thanks, guys.